Imagine a time when the British Empire was so vast that the sun literally couldn't keep up. It was always shining on some part of Queen Victoria's domain. But what was life really like during this era? Grab your cup of tea and let's embark on a jolly journey through Britain's golden age. At its zenith in the early 20th century, the British Empire covered about a quarter of the Earth's land surface and ruled over 458 million people. That's like having one
Yeah,
landlord for
boy.
half your neighborhood. London wasn't just the empire's heart, it was the world's crossroads. Spices from India, gold from Africa, and tea from Ceylon filled the markets, and the city was a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and occasionally questionable food choices. Speaking of exotic encounters, British settlers in Australia were baffled by kangaroos. Early reports described them as creatures with the head of a deer and the hopping of a frog. Imagine trying to explain that in a letter back home. Britain's prime wasn't just about painting the map red, it was about industry. The Industrial Revolution turned the UK into the world's workshop. Steam engines chugged along, factories hummed, and railways connected towns faster than you could say locomotive. Of course, all this progress had its downsides. Workers toiled long hours in conditions that would make a chimney sweep cringe. But hey, at least they had job security as long as they didn't mind a bit of soot in their tea. Home life wasn't spared from the industrial boom. Coal was the go to for heating and cooking, leading to interiors that matched the factories, sooty and smoky. It's no wonder spring cleaning became a national pastime. Now, coming on to the Victorian Society, a time when manners mattered, mutton chops were a fashion statement, and mysteries lurked in every foggy alley. The upper crust attended lavish balls, while the working class found solace in hearty ales and spirited sing alongs. Speaking of mysteries, this era gave birth to the detective genre. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle introduced us to Sherlock Holmes, the master sleuth who could deduce your breakfast menu from a single crumb on your collar. Love wasn't always sweet in the Victorian era. Vinegar Valentines were sarcastic cards sent to unwanted admirers, delivering insults instead of affection. Imagine expecting a love letter and getting roasted instead. The British Empire didn't just rely on tea and textiles, it had a navy that could make Poseidon himself think twice. The Royal Navy ensured that Britain's influence reached every corner of the globe, from the bustling ports of Hong Kong to the serene shores of the Caribbean. With such naval prowess, it's no wonder the saying Britannia rules the waves became more than just a catchy tune. It was a statement of fact. Not every voyage went smoothly. Navigational mishaps were common, leading to unexpected detours, but as long as there was rum in the hold, morale stayed afloat. Britain's prime was also a golden age for science. Isaac Newton had his eureka moment with a falling apple, laying the groundwork for classical mechanics. Later, Charles Darwin took a voyage to the Galapagos and pondered why some finches had better fashion sense than others, leading to his theory of evolution. Not every experiment was a success, but the spirit of inquiry and innovation was unmistakable. After all, progress often involves a few singed eyebrows. The quest for beauty led to some peculiar inventions. One such device was a rubber face mask designed to preserve youthful looks. Wearing it, however, made one resemble a bank robber more than a debutante. The arts thrived during Britain's prime. Theaters echoed with the words of Shakespeare, while novelists like Jane Austen and Charles Dickens captured the imaginations of readers worldwide. Art galleries showcased works that ranged from the sublime to the delightfully peculiar. Whether it was the tragic tales of star-crossed lovers or the comedic misadventures of the aristocracy, British culture offered something for everyone, provided you had a penchant for a dry wit and a stiff upper lip. Victorians had a fascination with the unusual, leading to art pieces that were both whimsical and bizarre. Taxidermy enthusiasts even created elaborate scenes featuring stuffed animals in human like settings. Daily life in Britain during its prime was a noisy, smelly, and surprisingly entertaining affair. Street vendors would compete to see who could shout the loudest about their freshest fish, even if it had already done a tour of the Thames before reaching the stall. Children, meanwhile, were expert mischief makers. Their idea of fun often included climbing lampposts, chasing stray dogs, and occasionally pelting unsuspecting passers-by with rotten fruit. And yet, despite the chaos, there was a strong sense of community, probably because everyone knew everyone else's business. Barber shops doubled as news stations. A quick shave came with an update on local scandals, royal gossip, and the occasional overly dramatic prediction about the end of the world, usually blamed on comets or strong winds. British cuisine, in its prime, was, how do we put this? Predictable. If it could be boiled, it was boiled. Meat, boiled. Vegetables, boiled. Even pudding, yep, boiled. Spices were available thanks to the empire's extensive trade networks, but the average Brit seemed to view them as dangerous foreign magic. Instead, they relied on salt, vinegar, and an impressive amount of courage. Some dishes were, let's say, adventurous. Jellied eels were a delicacy in London, proving that anything could be edible if you ignored common sense long enough. Fashion in Britain's golden age was a mix of elegance and mild suffering. For women, corsets were essential for achieving the perfect hourglass figure. Breathing, however, was optional. For men, the taller the top hat, the more respectable you were. Unfortunately, this also made them prime targets for strong gusts of wind, mischievous children, and low doorways. The obsession with oversized skirts led to some logistical nightmares. Entering a room required advanced spatial awareness, and sitting down was a calculated risk. If there's one thing Britain in its prime did best, it was humor. Dry, sarcastic, and often delivered with a completely straight face, British wit was sharper than a naval officer's sword. Even love had its fair share of sarcasm. If you didn't receive a heartfelt letter from a suitor, you might get a vinegar valentine instead, basically a Victorian version of a roast session, but on paper. Sports were taken very seriously, especially cricket. A match could last for days, and injuries were met with dramatic gas, followed by immediate tea breaks. But even the mightiest empires face challenges. The early 20th century brought about seismic shifts. World War I tested Britain's resources and resolve, leading to a reevaluation of its role on the global stage. The subsequent decades saw colonies striving for and achieving independence. The sun that once never set on the British Empire began to dip below the horizon, marking the end of an era and the dawn of a new chapter. So, what remains of Britain's prime? The influence of its golden age can still be seen in language, law, culture, and, of course, tea drinking habits. The empire may be long gone, but the legacy, both good and bad, lives on in ways we might not even realize. And if there's one thing Britain has truly perfected over the centuries, it's the ability to carry on, keep calm, and always, always have a cuppa. But here's the real question. If Britain had kept the empire, would we all be having tea with kangaroos in Australia right now?